Item 7 on our agenda, ngā takitarewa, and thank you Anna and thank you Janice for preparing the update and our Democratic Services staff. We'll just work our way through it with your agreement. Review of the Memorandum of Partnership. I think it's significant that this sits at the very top of our take, and I encourage us to consider committing time to progress this. And I think that the Memorandum of Partnership obviously needs to reflect the changing circumstances that we find ourselves in, particularly after both the independent review generated by Te Ao Wiki Whakarongotai, but also the Council respectfully conducting a review. We've had new appointments. We have an impending appointment, which I think we're all excited about, and they will definitely influence the future relationship and partnership that mana whenua and this local authority have. So I'm encouraging today's meeting to perhaps look at how we might go beyond just talking about timeframes, that we look at making a commitment to establish formal engagement with each other. We've talked about how we might look to do that. I think perhaps wānanga-based stuff, workshopping with each other. There's been suggestions about, I know individually, certainly from a Te Awa perspective, the value that we would have being able to engage directly at a governance level with our senior leadership team. So we haven't put any time frames in here, but I encourage our meeting today to seriously consider an approach that will bring us to the table and help us develop our approach regarding the Memorandum of Partnership between the three iwi and Kāpiti Coast District Council. So I welcome advice, I welcome comments on that. Darren, would you like to provide a comment?
Kia ora koutou. Perhaps by way of an introduction, if we were to have our requirement that sits in the Memorandum of Partnership for review in the first 6 months of each triennium, setting that aside, the approach that seems to be settling much more palatably is that of a review through agreement. Noting that we do have a pending announcement, and we're hoping to have that shortly in relation to the changes at the executive leadership table that we're making. I'm wondering if that is it a pause until that person is here, which would allow us to set that as a priority for that new group manager, or do we come to the next committee meeting with perhaps a framework for discussion, which would then at least start the process for us, which can be picked up and progressed as a matter of priority through the remainder of this year and perhaps into the first quarter of next year. Just put that as a suggestion.
Kōrero mai. Thank you, Darren. I think that's a good starting point. There is an impending appointment. I think that will greatly enhance our relationship in terms of having an equivalent sort of general manager alongside our senior leadership team. creating expectations definitely for the three iwi, having that dedicated individual aligned to those things that are of importance to us. And I don't think it should limit us, though, from developing a framework or a process that we might want to promote in advance of that appointment being confirmed, so that we can include that as part of the induction. That's what's going through my mind.
Kia ora tātou, tēnā koe Darren, tēnā koe Andre. Just like what you just said there, Andre, in terms of I don't think that the appointment or the pending appointment of the new general manager for the iwi leadership partnership team, I'd imagine there's going to be a reasonable, time frame just for bringing that particular person up to speed with where we are on most matters currently. And so I guess I support the Chair's recommendation here is that we continue on with those discussions and look to move with it and determine the time frame so that we can move. And I mean, for ngā hapū Ōtaki, we'd like to move and just tick the box, Andre, as we go through the things we need to get done in this current calendar year. Tēnā koe.
Any comments or advice from our online team? Councillor Halliday, kōrero mai.
Look, I pushed quite heavily for a 6-month review at the beginning of this process. I'm very comfortable to be guided by our CE with regards to his comment around review by appointment. I do agree that this is a big step in our relationships as such. So also agree with Denise with regards to we want to get this done, hopefully ticked off as a box ticks within the current year, which would be fantastic. But there will be a process, I dare say, of that person getting up to speed and building those relationships. I think be a little bit careful that we don't wait too long, though. The CE's or Darren's thoughts around perhaps starting a framework for that engagement, but happy to be guided by Mayor Holborough, who's also got her hand up with regards to her thoughts around that as well. But great to see forward movement in this space. And also noting, I think we've got a significant milestone, I think, next year as well.
Tēnā koe, Martin. Mayor Janet, kōrero mai.
Ngā mihi. Yeah, happy with everything that's been said so far. I think the positive thing is that we just have a good relationship anyway at the moment, and everything's kind of ticking along. It's just a matter of going through this process and formalising that, and then celebrating that incredible milestone that's coming up. So I think it'll be a really valuable process, and it'll be really good to get the elected members involved too, so that they can more deeply understand our obligations and our relationship.
Tēnā koe, Janet, thank you. Kim, kōrero mai.
Kia ora, yeah, just tautoko what has been said, and I would like to see that engagement framework started and get that underway as soon as possible, because it's been a long time coming. We all know it's been a long time coming, so I think we just need to get started.
I think by consensus, what Darren has recommended gives us the opportunity to start developing a framework that will continue to help inform us as we will engage as we are through Te Whakaminenga and through various other engagements with council. It will be timely in terms of the pending appointment that we're talking about and how that will help inform that appointment and the relationship that will be formed between that incoming iwi partnership general manager and the three iwi. So I will make a note that we will put that on the agenda as well for Friday morning when the three iwi come together, and hopefully that will include Huriwai, who I hope will be on the mend by then. So we can reflect that in our Ngā Take Tarewa from today's hui, please, Steph. And can I say, I think that the allocation of time and the priority around this will help inform other decisions that Te Whakaminenga are being asked to make. And there's a reference to at least one of those matters in this review of the Ngā Take Tarewa. Thank you. Item 4 on the list is to do with the mana whenua representation, and has identified that there are remaining vacancies on the Grants and Allocations Committee. One mana whenua representative to be appointed on the grants, community grant scheme. One mana whenua representative from Te Tiawa Ngāti Toa, the Creative Community Scheme. Can I just ask that note that Te Tiawa ki Whakarongotai has recently convened their hui atau, and I'll take the opportunity at this point to respectfully acknowledge the retirement of Chris Gerritsen, and as a consequence, and I'd like us to formally acknowledge his contribution as a trustee and as a member of Te Whakaminenga, and in most recent times the Strategic Operations and Finance Committee. Having said that, it means that there will be a formal notification to our Art Confederation partners and council of the returning trustee and a new trustee appointed to the Charitable Trust. And what that then means is that we will obviously review our appointments to the committees of council and council. So can I just ask that that's noted, please, Steve? But yeah, respectfully would like us to record our respectful appreciation and gratitude for Chris Gerritsen's contribution to the Kāpiti Coast District Council as a trustee of the Atiawa ki Whakarongotai Charitable Trust. Are there any other comments or any other information that we need to note regarding mana whenua appointments? I will ask Huriwai if we could please look at a mana whenua representative to the Creative Community Scheme, and we'll approach that again on Friday morning. Item 5, the establishment of the Māori ward. I see that there was a time frame that was identified, but I do want to report back through to Whakaminenga that there was a response provided directly to Mayor Janet regarding the Māori ward. Part of the rationale, I think, is reflective of the work that we are committing ourselves to in terms of the review of our Memorandum of Partnership, the new arrangements that now exist as a result of the reviews. I highlight the reviews that have adopted recommendations that have changed the opportunity for mana whenua to be representative around the council tables. That's in its infancy. That too is going to continue to evolve with this pending appointment that's going to be made. There is sufficient time to continue to consider a decision regarding the establishment of a Māori ward. I think we've concluded that it's not as time sensitive as what it was originally, and respectfully would like to take the time during the course of this triennium to really embed the new partnership arrangement, the new relationship that we've engineered, that will take a good component of this triennium for elected members and the iwi to determine what that looks like. And so I'd like to record today that for the moment, Mana Whenua's view is that we will look at the establishment of Māori ward, but not during the course of for this triennium, as has been reported through council and through Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti. So I'm comfortable to open up discussion regarding that. Tēnā koe, Janet. Kōrero mai.
Yeah, I appreciated the letter that you sent through, which I shared with the elected members. We're at a very early stage in the discussions about this, but it's going to be really useful for us to have our hui with elected members, so we have a more kind of deep appreciation of where we're at in our relationship, the potential impacts of having a Māori ward. Yeah, it's certainly, there's certainly a big push around the country for them. So councillors are under a bit of potential political pressure around that, but we have our own arrangements here which are long-standing and quite unique in the country. So I think the more that's understood, the more meaningful our discussions are going to be.
Kia ora, thank you, Jenna. Denise?
John, I don't have much to say. I think I shared this once before. So when it was first brought to our attention and we were asked for an opinion, is that I have a good understanding of what happens at Rotorua Lakes District Council with our whānau, other whānau whakapapa connections up there with Ngāti Whakauwi. And I often talk to my niece who's now being nominated as a councillor through the Māori ward process. And I share with her, without indulging too much, but I share with her the partnership we have here through Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti, Art and KCDC, and said to her, you need to push for something like this. Our people in Rotorua need to have a partnership with your people. Being a councillor on there doesn't necessarily guarantee you that. And they have 2 Māori representatives on there who came through the Māori ward position. And just, what's today? What is today? Well, Tuesday. Monday night she sent me, must have been about a 5-page document she had just released to Ngāti Whakauwi and councillors, clearly highlighting where their needs were not being heard in any way about housing for their people. And so their role had yet to be able to, the benefits of their role to the Māori ward had yet to be seen. And she just described it as this is a long pathway, and I encourage Ngāti Whakauwi to take an alternative pathway. Kia ora.
Any other comments or advice? I do want to stress that our ngā take nārewa, a tārewa, is seeking preliminary views. And what Denise has shared, I see as a preliminary view. And so not wanting to dismiss the energy or the interest within the district, if you like, regarding a Māori ward, but it is first and foremost protecting the rights and responsibilities of mana whenua. But I also think it provides the opportunity to continue seeking preliminary advice And there are models around Aotearoa that I think we should be encouraging the Art Confederation to look at. And it would be helpful, I think, to develop a strategy around that with our elected members so that we can engage directly, perhaps with other mana whenua regarding their approach to representation of Māori at local authority level. For the moment, I guess the preliminary view is that we have some big priorities sitting in front of us, not dismissing at all the awareness that Māori wards from certain constituents' viewpoints provides a voice at the table, an elected voice at the table. I think we've indicated that there's an opportunity to invest some time on this, but not at the expense of being distracted from those matters currently that have brought us back to the table as a unified local authority with our three mana whenua, who also will continue to exercise their role as kaitaki for mātāwaka, tangata Pasifika hoki.
Mr. Chair, may I provide a procedural update on that topic? Kia ora. Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to give an update on, I guess, procedural matters relating to this topic and what you can expect to see happening. So there is, having had feedback from Te Whakaminenga at this stage, there is, I guess, one final, maybe not final, there is a further step from a staff perspective, and that is to close out an open recommendation that is sitting on our books. And in several places, there is this open recommendation or resolution of council noting that last trainium, when Te Whakaminenga considered this, Te Whakaminenga asked the council to reconsider it in the next trainium, which is now. So the feedback that you've given formally today, Mr. Chair, will feed into a report to go to council, noting that that Te Whakaminenga had asked the council to consider this in this trainium. We have sought your feedback on this issue. This is what it is. So that's, I guess, a procedural piece at our end, and you can expect to see that going to council within the next couple of months, I think.
Ka pai. Whakamārama na tātou. We hear what Janet's saying. Janice is saying we're comfortable with how we approach it. It's not taking it off the table. I think we should recognise that it is going to be an ongoing conversation, but I think it might also be helpful if the three iwi can formalise this so that there's a response that can be provided that can communicate out our views at this point to the community at large. And obviously, as Jenna is saying, procedurally, there's an open recommendation that will need to be addressed further through our reporting process with council. Any other comments or questions? Any advice? Ka pai. Item 7, again, I know there was some tight timeframes being managed regarding the issuing of or publication of the Maramataka for this period, and I'm satisfied that we were able to confirm our support for our Art Rongowa Collective to conclude the work that had been started to generate a Maramataka for this period. I think it's helpful also to recognise that it has raised helpful consideration regarding the protection of intellectual and cultural property rights. I don't know that we have necessarily addressed that as we became familiar with this annual project to generate Maramataka and appointing that across the three iwi to get involved in that, you know, revealing photographs, tāhuhu kōrero, you know, our special, unique accounts of our history. So I think one of the outcomes from this year's publication is to make us more aware of the need to protect that intellectual and cultural property. And I think the other comment I want to make is that this does not in any way prohibit us returning to the tradition of inviting an individual member of the Art Confederation to consider the publication of a Maramataka based on whatever kaupapa or take that they desire. What it does ask us to consider, though, is how valuable is it for this district to have the mātauranga shared across the district to produce Maramataka that is particularly relevant to rongoa. So I see this creating a separate conversation where there may well be huge expectations and huge support for Maramataka to grow and develop and to be a part of this community by sharing the knowledge and sharing the information that captures our traditional approach to the Maramataka. And as I said at a previous meeting, this year is a catch-up year. And so not only is it being able to share our traditional knowledge, but it also can become a very powerful educational tool. And I see my moko, my eldest moko yesterday, reciting a karakia for Maramataka. And so Koko's got to go and learn this of his moko. So, look, I think the publication of this particular Maramataka for this period is significant, and I would like us to have further consultation around the desire to produce a Maramataka that is particularly rongoa focused, but not to diminish the opportunity that we have traditionally had through Te Whakaminenga to invite one of the Confederation partners to consider a topic, a theme, to produce the Maramataka that has been supported and resourced through our partnership with KCTC. I invite further comment and advice on this take. Tēnā koe, Councillor Halliday. Kōrero mai.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's not so much comment as I'm just aware of the timeframes that are being shown here on this document, and taking into consideration what you've just been saying, is there something in line to be delivered around July? Because it's not that far away. I didn't really pick that up in what was just spoken to as such. My apologies, I'm not that over this. This is something that I've more leave to my mana whenua with regards to progressing forward, shall we say. But you mentioned it's a catch-up year. What is happening as such? Is there an update with regards to that at all? My apologies for my ignorance in this space.
Tēnā koe, Councillor Halliday. No, I don't accept it as ignorance, because I think everyone's learning at speed what does this mean for us. And there are those, of course, that are the experts in this area, but for a vast majority of people, this has become a new way to express ourselves. At the previous meeting, when we discussed the Maramataka and we had very short time frames to get a response, my explanation at the time was, although we have a date on the Pākehā calendar of the 14th of July, this is a significant year in terms of the 3-year cycle, where effectively we catch up. And so I challenged us to look at the 14th of July as an example and ask ourselves the question, what phase are we in? What is that day? Is it a high energy day? Is it a low energy day? How significant is that day? And I think we should be guided by the Maramataka to determine how Kāpiti with mana whenua celebrate the launch or the unveiling of our Maramataka. So I see here in our current Ngā Take Tarewa, the 17th of July, I would suspect that we are going to make a decision regarding the formal launch of this based on the Maramataka, based on that cycle. And so whilst New Zealand celebrates on Friday the 14th, I think this is where we should be challenging ourselves to ensure that the publication of a Maramataka is absolutely consistent by the way in which we celebrate it and by the way in which we launch it, and how do we do that and where do we do that. So I don't know if that answers what you say, are asking and commenting on as an ignorance, Councillor Halliday, but first of all, happy that we've got agreement to publish this Maramataka. Secondly, I'm respectfully encouraging us to be influenced on all decisions regarding the publication, the launch, the celebration of it, based on the qualified opinion and advice that we can seek that is consistent with the Maramataka itself, that cycle, if you like, the lunar cycle, that will indicate what days are appropriate, what days are significant for us to do that.
Thank you for that clarity, Andre. It was much appreciated. Fully supportive. I think yes, definitely. There's a calendar date in the New Zealand calendar with regards to this, but I very much support the view of the cycles involved here and our own launches being in relation to that. So I very much enjoyed the celebrations last year, and I'll be very much enjoying them again, hopefully this year as well. And we'll be reading up a lot more on it as well. Thank you.
Tēnā koe. Kei a koe te wā, tēnā. Nau nei whāreki hea te kaupapa nunui mō tātou.
Kia ora anō kia tātou. Thank you, Martin, for your question. There is an update scheduled at 10.4 in the agenda. However, kei te pai. Given your question, the chair has agreed for me to provide that update now, so I'll do so. So first of all, in consultation and in discussion with our Art Rongoa collective, they have agreed that the most appropriate time to launch the Maramataka is actually Friday the 22nd of July, and they have based that on the appropriateness of the date of the launch. So my update today was to inform Te Whakaminenga that the launch will now be on the 22nd of July. It will be held at Te Ramaroa. So that is the choice of location as being most appropriate to launch the Maramataka. Sorry, I'm getting questioned here. Friday the 21st, is it? Oh, thank you. I haven't got my papers ready. You've caught me on the hop. So Friday the 21st at Te Ramaroa, 10:30 will be the time. So this is an informal notification. Invitations will be sent out. So we're currently working on developing that Maramataka to be available for the launch on that date. Ka pai?
Tēnā koe tēnā. What I might ask is if we update our Ngā Take Tarewa, that we actually identify that cycle for that date. Yeah? it might be helpful that we generate that, because that will give immediate insight to why that day is appropriate. What does that capture? Yeah, and of course this is us being able to create information, education around the rationale for us wanting to support our adoption of Maramataka as the way of, I guess, navigating us through this next period of time.
So just a tāpiritanga ki tēnā. So the date is actually referred to as Oho Ata, is the rangi.
Item 8, I'll move on to item 8, heritage funding. I see here that the chair and the group manager are being encouraged to get together. Can I ask to identify which group manager, so that group manager knows which chair?
That would be my colleague Mike Mendonça, I believe.
boy.
So we can update your
I thought so.
action list, but B, make sure he's aware of which chair he should be focused on.
Right, happy to progress that with him. Matariki. 14th of July or thereabouts. This obviously will link into what we've just discussed in terms of our Maramataka. Is there anything else we need to note regarding Matariki?
Are we going to have it on the 14th or the 13th?
Tēnā koe rākau te ora. What's been noted here, obviously, what I can see in here is 14th of July, which is the national celebration. And it says all thereabouts. So I guess what I'm assuming, we have a date now, the 21st of 7, for the official launch of Maramataka. It would make sense that we're redirecting some energy around that as well. But yeah, I guess it's just emphasising the fact that the 14th of July doesn't capture Matariki, eh? Yeah, it's a component of it. The whole of Pipiri is in this cycle is where we're catching up. Yeah, it's a significant year in terms of the 3-year cycle. So I imagine that we need to talk further about the date that's been given now, 21st of July. Yeah, so put that in your diary, Rākau te ora. Councillor Kirby.
Kia ora, I'm just conscious that Māori Lands is also doing some stuff around Matariki, and so would probably ask to consider that whatever we're planning fits. I'm not sure, I don't want to overstep my ground here, but
I'm also aware that Ngāti Toa are very active at the moment, inviting us all in. There's massive hui been going on, I know, through Hongaweka and Takapuahia. So, look, perhaps something that might be helpful from today's hui is to gather the information that links the three iwi across the district to those celebrations that are being planned and programmed. So perhaps our item 9 can be expanded to clearly identify those various initiatives that will include our mana whenua partners, but the district, yeah. Item 10, Waitangi Day, 30 years of partnership. Again, I'm just noting I would like to know who's that group manager that needs to know me. Is that you, Janice? Or-
Currently, yes,
Yes.
but that will be
Yes. All right.
my new colleague soon.
Yeah, all right.
Mhm.
So I'm making that note for myself. Is there an update, a indication that we should record and note regarding Waitangi Day 2024? It's not too far away. As we celebrate Matariki, we should be celebrating beginning of the new year that will head us towards Hui Tānguru in 2024. So it's a good time to be forecasting what Waitangi Day might look like for us in 2024. Again,
Expect to hear more about, for there to be more kōrero about that at the next Te Whakaminenga, I think.
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to encourage us generating some more kōrero around this for our next hui. But in the interim, perhaps, again, we might stimulate further kōrero around this through our Art Confederation Forum. Right. Please add to the conversation if you wish to. Any comment or advice from the floor? Tēnā, kore.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou. Just to note that one of the 3 iwi partners will be presenting to the Waitangi Tribunal at the end of this year, and they will be the 3rd of the 3 iwi to present their claims, and it will be 180 odd years since the signing of Te Tiriti. So it will be significant next year in that the 3 iwi partners will have all had their claims heard.
Thank you, Tiana. Yeah, tautoko tō o kōrero. And perhaps might we then just add in the dates of those hearings, eh? So there's 2 hearings late in the year, and obviously there's technical evidence as well that's been presented. But yeah, as we get closer towards the end of this year, we are definitely going to be heading towards the conclusion of this phase of the Y2200 inquiry. So I'm going to suggest that we embed in here those dates of those remaining hearings.
Aroha mai he tāpiritanga anō. So given number 8 on the list in terms of heritage, I feel that it's just appropriate to note that Taumanuka and Rangiuru are significant sites for the Art Confederation. And given that number 10 reflects Waitangi Day and the partnership, Rangiuru Pā, as we all know, is one of the sites where Te Tiriti o Waitangi was signed.
Me haere tātou. Item 11, budget family property, Wainuiwhenua.
Kia ora tātou. Do we have time for a quick slideshow as
Yeah,
well? Okay,
yes.
brilliant. Thank you very much, and thank you this morning for having me along to give you a little bit of background about the Wainuiwhenua Project. I know a few of you might have heard or been to a briefing we had a little while back for elected members, and this follows a similar format. And it's just to provide a bit of background on the work that's been going on in the space for a while now, ahead of a paper that's formally coming to council. And that was previously rescheduled just because of lack of availability. So now we've got a date of 20th of July for the next council meeting, where we're looking to bring a formal paper around this update and the next steps to council for decisions on those next steps. Sorry about that. So just a little bit of background around the Wainuiwhenua project itself, and I guess the discussions around the potential in and around the Paikakariki area have come along through time, particularly around Transmission Gully as a key development in the area, and in particularly once the construction of the motorway began and through over the hills, there's a lot more discussion in and around the local community about the potential and what was going to happen around the impacts, but also what that would mean for the village and the surrounding area looking to the future. So in 2018, following a number of ongoing discussions in and around the village, there was a workshop held by Kāpiti Coast District Council here, where we invited a number of government agencies and local community groups alongside Ngāti Haumea Paikakariki to have a discussion, a bit of a kōrero, to understand what the interests were in and around the future surplus land once the motorway had been completed. On that day, it was agreed that the Wainuiwhenua Working Group would be formed, and that was led and co-chaired by the former Mayor, Jenny Rowan, who was representing a collection of the local community groups, and also former Mayor Guru Nathan at the time, representing the council's role and link to the project. The discussion was very much a community-led discussion, and it was about how the potential of the land could be secured for future public good, and in particular at the heart of that was meeting and enabling some of the needs of local mana whenua, particularly Ngāti Haumea Paikakariki. So the outcomes have always broadly been about how can we collectively support mana whenua, community, district and the regional outcomes, and I'll provide a little bit of context around what those might look like in a couple of slides. But you'll see the picture up there to the right, and apologies for the size of it, but you'll see when we refer to the Wainuiwhenua area collectively, that includes the Perkins Farm, which was traditionally the hill country where Transmission Gully now cuts right through the middle of, and you see the steep hills up on the sloping down the escarpment side to the sea and into the hinterland up to the shoulders of Mount Wainui itself. And then there's another small piece of land to the further north, which is close to Mackay's Crossing, which is also the wetland and also referred to as the asphalt plant area at the moment, and that's where the works have been based to actually construct Transmission Gully and are still operating in and around that area. So that's collectively what we refer to as the potential surplus land, and around this opportunity that's been discussed for a number of years. So at the heart of the potential use of this future land, the community collective group of Wainuiwhenua has developed a number of underlying pieces of work to support the thinking and what those potential uses might be. The first of these was a landscaping report prepared by a land consultant, Ground Truth, and so that looked at a lot of the physical geography, the nature of the land, but also a lot of the history of the land. So a lot of close discussions and liaison with Ngāti Haumea Paikakariki about the use and kind of historic sites in and around the area, particularly around some pits up on the hill, kai pits, and some other the use for farming and agriculture around the area as well. And also the discussions involved a lot of engagement from those community groups. So you'll see that's a list of the key groups there in and around, but a variety of interests from some of those pressures and opportunities around local housing needs, and that includes mana whenua as well as the community housing needs, some environmental, ecological interests up on the hills and the importance, and a lot of work already going on up there to help restore some of the forestry and native plantings in the area, but also some of the waterways, so in particularly Wharidawa stream and some of the other connections in the areas, but also some of the overall pressures of the village and how it grows and looks to the future and what does that mean. So a lot of discussion and a couple of public huis in developing the proposal up, and at the end of 2019 a community proposal was developed that shaped out a number of aspirations and potential uses for the land, and that was endorsed by the wider community through a couple of those wider community huis. So what do those look like? And they are a range of public goods, and as I mentioned, so some of them, and this is some of the land use mapping that came through from that earlier work, a number of areas looking for ecological restoration, particularly up on the hills, not very good for agriculture or other uses, a lot of challenging land there for production purposes, so a lot of potential for ecological restoration. Also recreational uses, so the potential for this area has a potential to join up a number of significant other regional recreational networks. So we've got the actual escarpment walk to the south, we've got Mount Wainuiwhenua, Wharidawa, and of course Queen Elizabeth Park as well. So right in the heart of that is where this land sits, and so it could help facilitate and join up a lot of opportunities across that collective area, allowing people to move from the south of Battle Hill all the way further north up into Parapara Umu and then now to the Otaki, if you wanted to follow those networks all the way through. Climate change, potential for carbon sequestration on the site is a big one, but also some potential to offset sea level rise impacts on some of the housing in and around the seashore, sea line of Paikokariki village was identified as a potential where some of those houses might be able to be shifted, looking long term to the future. Housing and the ability and need to actually help meet mana whenua needs about social and community housing in the area, key pressures in and around, and not much housing or land to provide for housing, so that was quite a key area that came through. Potential for wind generation, there's been a project that's been in development for some years looking to generate and supply energy locally to the village and become self-sufficient using wind power from up on the hill. Also, as I mentioned before, supporting the restoration of the wetland systems. Traditionally, there's been some significant flooding in and across the area. It's a highly active with the steep hills and the kind of wetlands at the bottom. Very important environment, but also has a lot of potential impacts around that flooding that need to be managed. And also, lastly, they're just about the parks and recreation, but also that cultural and heritage significance. So both some local mana whenua iwi kind of connections going right back, but also there's some relics in and around to do with the military occupation there later on in the 40s, or I should know that, the 40, it's period, World War II period. But also to Perkins Farm as well. There's some significant, the old wool sheds and buildings there. So at the heart of this is a collective bunch of potential uses that the site could have that's been identified through a range of consultations and engagements to date. And it's really pivoted on the ability for using the Public's Works Act, knowing that once the transmission gully's been completed, it'll be disposed of through that process. And so really been looking to leverage that as a primary vehicle has been the initial concept of this work as it's evolved to actually form a better picture up. And we're at the stages now to kind of better understand what does that machine or mechanism look like going forward and what are the options. During the period that this work has come forward from that initial 2018, there's been the development of ongoing relationships from Kāpiti Coast Council with the Wainuiwhenua group. It's evolved to also bring in Greater Wellington, who's got those links to the regional recreation, broader ecological interests, and also Ngāti Toa Rangatira around some of those housing, the local and the situation more broadly, and the links and fit there. That's been followed up over time. That's responded in a letter that went jointly to the Ministers for Land Information and Transport, and that was really just to signal that broader interest. One of the key things that happens with surplus land is once it's ready to go, it triggers a process, and then that's on a time frame. And so at that time, it was quite important to just signal that interest for some broader uses, so it was quite clear that it wouldn't just disappear overnight and the opportunity would be lost. So it was really putting a line in the sand and signalling some of the potential opportunities in the future. And then another significant milestone was that in May 2022, Greater Wellington agreed to provide some more technical support and seek some advice about what those options are, because once you get into the Public Works Act processes and other potential vehicles, it's quite complex. So providing a bit of an understanding of what ways and opportunities were there was quite important. And so that advice came out, I think it was late last year, and that identified a range of potential options that could be taken, and it's all around the offer-back obligations, where previous owners under the Public Works Act can get the land back, or whether not, then other pathways are available. And one of those, if the offer-back does apply, one option's for councils to put its hands up early in the hierarchy of processes, to be able to say it wants to take the land for public uses. And that would need to be across councils, because of course district councils are responsible for some public uses while regional councils are responsible for others. And as part of that discussion, there's also been looking at what other avenues could there be. Part of the discussions to date have identified the desire to support mana whenua ownership, if not management, in and around the land as well. So part of that's explored the potential around a CCO, council-controlled organisation, as a way to kind of devolve that responsibility that can be shared at arm's length as well. A letter went back to Minister Woods, who's been interested and keeping tabs about this, just to identify where the work was, and we've been following up with that recently and looking to do that following our council paper in the next wee while. But just to signal, this is kind of at a stage where now we've understood some of the options, and there's a bit of work to work through about, well, what does that mean and what are those going forward. And so there's a bit of work required to actually scope those, understand what potential partnership structures could look like. And in particular, there's two things driving that. One is that if the disposals process is triggered, it's on a timeline that started. And then secondly, also we've got the long-term plan coming up. So thinking to the future, potential needs from a council perspective, and what that means needs to be planned ahead into that consideration of that process. So the next steps, we're looking to bring the report formally to council to provide that advice that I mentioned, and a bit of the outline that I've just provided you very quickly. On the 20th of July is when it's due to come to council. And it's essentially going to seek support and additional resource for us to work alongside others to help scope those pathways and understand what the ownership and management options might be with partners across the project. Another piece of work, council's looking to progress itself with its own council's hat on, because it wears two hats. It's responsible for looking at its infrastructure needs as well. So we're looking just to do our initial assessments of what requirements are in and around the area for networks, just to make sure we ensure their resilience into the future and where that might lie in and across the areas as well. So we're clear on that when the decisions come forward. And that includes the potential for housing in the area. And then the last one we're also doing work on is, you may be aware, we're doing a Kāpiti vision piece of work now, looking out to 2060, big picture. What does Kāpiti look like, but also visions for each of the communities across the district as well. So Wainuiwhenua will be quite a core component of what that future vision and shaping of a vision could be for Paikakariki village as well, given that the communities had such a strong hand in its development and the kind of opportunities to date. And just to say that I know we've already had some discussions around this at the last hui, the last Te Whakaminenga discussion. So as part of that, we also know that there's potential links and overlaps with regards to Te Atiawa as well. And I know we had an exchange where we'll be looking to include the Taio unit as part of operational discussions going forward. And that's ahead of the paper coming up on the 20th of July.
Okay.
Happy to take questions.
Yeah. Kia ora, thank you, Hamish. Yeah, I'm happy to take questions or any comments regarding the presentation on Wainuiwhenua today. Perhaps just a couple of comments to seek further clarification, Hamish. First of all, thank you for the update. It's helpful. I'm aware in the slide presentation it identifies Wainuiwhenua working group. Is that separate to the Budge House Action Group that is populated by Carl Farrell, Jenny Rowan?
It is separate, but there's overlapping.
Ali Weber,
people
Sophie
working for us.
Hanford, and Margaret Jackson. So there are two separate working groups or steering groups that we're talking about?
Yes, correct.
There is, okay. Can we identify the members of that Wainuiwhenua working group?
I can provide them through to you, but I mean,
Yeah.
Jenny Rowan, yeah, I can provide them through. It's a bit easier because there's a bit of a list. There's a smaller group and then the wider community interest group, but there's
Yes.
certainly a smaller working group.
Yeah,
of
okay.
about
If
5.
we could do that perhaps and update that in our Ngātaki Tarewa. My appreciation is that the Budge House Action Group have been particularly vocal after Carl Farrell came and presented his take regarding the historic papakainga of the old kuia, that he was then encouraged to come to Te Whakaminenga, which he did. My appreciation too is that there have been some fairly high-level conversations that have transpired, which you've captured in your presentation, involving Greater Wellington, involving Ngāti Toa. My appreciation is that the Wainuiwhenua block was identified during the course of the Ngāti Toa settlement phase, but there was no progress made to secure that as a result of their settlement process. What I think Tati Awa ki Whakarongotai are wanting to be respectful of is the acknowledgement of Ngāti Haumia. And Ngāti Haumia, and I've spoken to representatives of Ngāti Haumia independently, and whilst there can clearly show a relationship between Ngāti Haumia and Ngāti Tō Rangatira, I think I'm satisfied at this point that Ngāti Haumia see themselves as a completely independent entity. And it's on that basis that Tati Awa wishes to recognise them. We deployed our consultant to initiate contact with Ngāti Toa so we could gain our own appreciation of where things are sitting across the operational space, and want to advance that, as we had previously indicated, by asking if we could meet on site. And first and foremost, Hamish, that's in response to Carl propositioning council and Te Whakaminenga to do with the papakainga. Beyond that, I guess, is the wider conversation, which is what I referred to when he initially came to council, is the entire 16 acres. It's a fairly expensive. It's significant, yeah. And what might be the future plan from a Ngāti Haumia perspective, not wanting to disrespect, I guess, a considerable amount of energy that's been generated between the regional authority and Ngāti Toa. But just wanting to emphasise our importance of recognising Ngāti Haumia. So I think, yeah, it is helpful to clearly identify who are these separate groups. One obviously has a general interest in the overall conversation about the land that was is now surplus from the expressway project, and also then a particular component of that entire block that has historical significance to Ngāti Haumia. I think that's important for us to stay on top of. But at this point, from our perspective, there's been general agreement we should establish an opportunity to meet on site, and it would be favourable, I think, Hamish, if we could plan to do that before the paper comes back to council on the 20th of July. From our perspective, Tatiawa perspective, that should and would include our operational arm. It would clearly want to ensure that Ngāti Haumia are represented there. It should be notified to those people who have formed this Budge House Action Group. It should include any of our Crown agencies, Te Papa Atawhai and so forth, that have been involved in this conversation right up until this point. Yep. I'm aware too of strong advocacy regarding the protection of that whare, and I think I'm aware that there's been some suggestion of it being relocated, and the ability to look at what could be secured to protect it, to restore it, but particularly to protect it. My initial conversations with one of the Ngāti Haumia representatives was General Akuia, actually, reluctance about that whare being moved, but I think some of the information that's been generated has indicated that the whare is exposed to the environment, that may continue to impact upon its potential deterioration. So I just want to share my understanding of some of those matters that I think add value to what you've reported today. And I can see that you're indicating a willingness to kōrero to this, Chris, so you may be able to help further qualification around those things that I've raised. So I'll ask you respectfully that.
Thank you for that. I guess I just wanted to share that the Budge House working group that you're referring to, KCDC council staff have now taken a role to support effectively managing the project for Carl and his whānau with Greater Wellington and us, and also the links to the, or potential links to the Wainuiwhenua Project. I wondered if it might be useful for us to come back and provide an update on the options that have been put on the table to support the way forward for Carl and his whānau. So at the moment, we've been working with Greater Wellington and the Department of Conservation to identify some options and a preferred way forward. And also the idea that in addition to the support you have already indicated for Ngāti Haumia, that we may also be in a position to write to ministers about some of the challenges in this space, particularly around legislation and also the alignments, I think, to treaty settlement process that has gone through to date, but may also be going through. So we're looking for a short-term solution so that Carl and his whānau are supported in terms of their housing now, but also that the whānau as a whole has the opportunity to shift their family home to a new position with infrastructure, so running water and toilets, etc., so that they can live there in perpetuity. So the work is coming together. So I think Wainuiwhenua was previously separate from the conversation, but is now sort of being folded into the options that could be put on the table to progress.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the update. And it's just about maintaining oversight, I guess, for the initial approach that was made by Carl in his capacity as as a descendant of the Pacha whānau, but understandably there is also the bigger conversation that's been happening regarding Wainuiwhenua land at surplus. How might that be better utilised in the future without diminishing the importance and the significance of Ngāti Haumia in this conversation? We just don't want them to be lost in these conversations where we've had considerable period of time where there's been engagement between Ngāti Toa and Crown agencies. So thank you. Councillor Sophie, you're with us, so I just acknowledge I've mentioned you as being a member of the Budge House Action Group. So I would welcome your contribution to this kōrero.
Yeah, kia ora, just a really brief contribution that we've put out the call for the agencies to all come together into the same room on the 5th of July. So it's not too far away, but we'll make sure that that invitation also goes out to all of you, and also to note that there was a real desire from the different agencies that are really keen to be party to finding a solution for Carl and his whānau around the Budge House relocation, to have some sort of a site visit before that hui on the 5th of July. So that could potentially tie in directly with what you were suggesting, Andre, which I think is a really useful suggestion. So we can definitely make sure that, kind of speaking, I guess, with my Budge House Action Group hat on, but also in my role as the Paikakiriki Raumatie Ward Councillor, that you're looped in with those kōrero and those different hui as well.
Tēnā koe, Sophie. Where is it proposed this meeting will take place on the 5th of July?
In Paikakiriki, and we're just working with Carl and the whānau as to a location. It'll either be at Ramaroa or at the Paikakiriki Bowling Club at 12 o'clock on the 5th of July.
Thank you, and I'll ask that you notify me and those that need to be included once you have confirmed that venue. I haven't been bowling for a while, so it might not be sensible to go there. But Ramaroa is certainly a significant site, and I wonder whether the 5th might present the opportunity as well to go on to the site, but I'll leave that in your hands for now. Any other further, Hamish?
I was just gonna say there's we were actually planning a catch up, an operational catch up around some of the and I was going to extend it to the Taio unit as well. But there might be another date as well that could work from the Wainuiwhenua group, so we might be able to coordinate too. And that was just a bit later. I think it was only like the 15th of July. I'll come back. I'll send you an email, Sophie, to see if we can coordinate, because we might be able to get that to occur and line up for the other dates as well.
Very good. Yeah, we've noted that's been registered with you. Sophie, are there any other comments? Any other advice on this take? Just obviously we've taken the liberty of attaching this item of the agenda 10.3 into our Ngā Take Tarewa, so I'm satisfied if there's no more questions or comments that we've taken care of 10.3 on our agenda, and thank you, Hamish. And thank you, Chris. I'm just going to revert back to our Ngā Take Tarewa, item 12, tangata whenua, consideration be given to putting, I can't see the rest of the kupu in there, mana whenua partners having input to this section. So you'll know that we've registered the importance of mana whenua providing advice, providing comment, and it's about how do we create that synergy between those report writers of council, the authors of reports and recommendations that should encourage and invite mana whenua to provide comment in that particular component of our reporting process. So encouraging us to continue working on how we can establish that synergy so that mana whenua is visible, that tangata whenua considerations are clear for elected members to see when the reports come to the table. So I see that as work in progress. Item 13 is Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti Secretariat. I think this is generated from individuals holding down full-time jobs and allocating time to attend to matters that consume our time and energy, being attached to Te Whakaminenga o Kāpiti, and I think it's worth giving further consideration about how might the resource being attached to us relieve us of some of the additional volunteer time that we occupy trying to stay on top of things. So I see that as work in progress, but I think it's important that this take stays on our list of priorities. Any comment? Any advice? I'm not getting any radical nods of disagreement. Okay. Item 14, Reserve Management Plan Work Program. We're talking about getting together, organising a workshop with our mana whenua representatives so we can gain a better appreciation for this. So again, work in progress, but it might be helpful to push ourselves to timeline this. Is that something we need to be doing in advance of this impending appointment again, or are we going to rely on that appointment activating our engagement on it? I suggest that we give this further thought and we start looking at committing time and energy to bring this together. Yeah. Not getting any heads nodding from left to right. Yes, Darren.
Sorry. So thank you. If I could add, it's really important for us to keep our work program progressing. So perhaps with the reserve management plan, there's a conversation start piece there with Mike Mendonza, our group manager in Places and Spaces, which would then lead into a handover when it's appropriate.
Item 15.
I can provide an additional update if you...
Thank you, Janice.
So part of the kōrero around the Otaki Youth Space report was the need for a broader conversation around rangatahi between council and the three iwi of the Art Confederation. So I just want to flag that that is something that our team will be coming out to you on shortly to initiate that conversation.
Item 16 is really just reflecting what I've just referred to in a way. We've duplicated it. Yeah. Okay. So do we put is 16 12? 16 and 12. So 16 is 12. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. Maybe someone just added it again so we could see what was missing in the photocopy.
Yeah, let's go with
it's
that.
just making sure we they were just realising how we missed that first two lines. Kapai, so we've covered that off.
May I make a correction to item 8,
Yes, item 8.
Yes. I've woken up properly now, and actually I am the group manager. That is, my colleague Mr. Mendonça does indeed have some responsibilities around heritage funding, but that item relates specifically to an activity that currently sits within the iwi partnership
All
space.
right.
So
Very good.
it's me. Yeah.
Thank you, Janice. So we'll note that and amend our agenda. Are there any other matters that we haven't covered off in our action list, in our Ngā Take Tarewa? Anything from staff that we haven't noted or that we should note?
There is an item that has been asked to be brought to your attention. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time or place. We are not. We have a new strategy that is currently being developed, and there was a request to have an opportunity to engage with mana whenua in regards to an arts and heritage strategy. So we'll probably bring that more information to you via the Art Forum and seek for a pathway for engaging with mana whenua. Tēnā koe.
Yeah, so I thank you, Deanna. I will concur that we just add that to our list, and just recognising that I have actually discussed this matter with the Mayor in our initial engagement, and really relative to significant cultural sites, reflecting back on the huge work undertaken in the time Queenie was active in this space. There's what you might call a plinth or a concrete plinth, I'd call it, just inside the gate at Rangiatia. That's been sitting there now pretty much since the replication of that whare. And it's sad that it hasn't been, the original plaque that we had there hasn't been replaced. And I note that there are other significant cultural heritage sites where we had originally planned to renew all of those. And so that's got to be somewhere around 1996. So I think it's important that we recognise those people within our community, particularly those mana whenua that were very active in those times. I'm just trying to think of the other chap that was extremely active alongside Queenie. I think about Te Waka Road. There was also one there that identified whole whenua, and so those significant sites to the three iwi are important for us to continue to recognise. We've got other initiatives that are generated to help inform our community about the historical history of our takiwā, and yet those pre-existing sites are still standing there, and some work was done, but the work's incomplete, and it's now 2 decades later. So I appreciate that being brought to us, because I think the strategy is going to be provide us with the energy that's needed to respectfully reinstate the significance of those sites across the district. Yeah. So thank you, Diana, and we'll pick that up on Friday.
So just for clarification, the strategy is currently called the Culture and Creativity Strategy, right, which covers arts, heritage and creativity.
Any further comment?
actually, sorry, yes, there is one related to that. It was on the job list a number of years ago, and I think it was updating the cenotaph. Is that how you say it?
Cenotaph.
In Otaki, with some further names. I think it was under this. Correct me if it doesn't look you, but just to note that for that mahi. Kia ora.
Good point. We've addressed 10 point. What, the 10.1. Yeah. We're going to move to 10.1 on page 31, and I respectfully acknowledge our Ngāti Pare Raukawa whanaunga sitting there patiently. Tēnā koe, Claire. Thank you for preparing this.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Tuatahi me mihi atu ki te atua, nāna nei nā me katoa. Tuarua ki a koe, Andre, mō nā kupu tapu I te ata nei. Ka huri oku whakaro ki a Jill Stansfield. I mati ia I naine, ina nahi. He wahine kaha ia ki te tautoko nā kaumatoa o te rohi nei. Moi mai rā I te rangatira I tō moingaroa. Ka hoki mai ki a tātou ngā kanohi a ora. Nō reira kia koutou nā rangatira o ngā iwi E toru o tērā kia koutou katoa. Nei rā te mihi mai oha kia koutou katoa. We've got So I've come to talk to you about our age-friendly approach, Kāpiti approach. Andre, I really would like you to have a look at these kupu to make sure that they're correct, and if they're not, how we can correct them. So this is a whakatauki from Wi Te Kākarakura Parata, whakarongo ki ngā kupu o ngā kaumātua. Ka hutia I runga I a koe mau I hau atu ki te ao hau. Learn the wisdom of your elders, apply it to yourself and pass it on to the new world. And it's a whakatauki that we thought was very appropriate for this body of work. Purpose of today's meeting is to share what our age-friendly approach looks like, our vision, our values, our focus areas, and then any questions at the end. Age-friendly community, my lovely uncle Whatarangi was part of some work that he did, and his advice for the younger generation was manifest your whakapapa. Always has words of wisdom. An age-friendly community is a place where we can stay connected, healthy, active and respected whatever our age. Our vision is that our older people will feel cared for, connected and able to contribute now and into the future. We've done quite a lot of research and community work within Kāpiti, and these are the four real main drivers of what we're looking at for an age-friendly Kāpiti. So recognises the wide range of capacity and capability of our older people, future-proofs in response to positive ageing needs and interests, is inclusive and celebrates older people's diverse identities and lifestyle, and making sure Kāpiti is safe and accessible for older people and addresses inequities. Our values, we've actually taken our values, there are 5 from our kaupapa tuku iho. In the context of our approach, we're looking at our older people as tōtara, who've stood the test of time and are significant in our communities. We're just passing out this one-pager. It's still in draft form because there is some little minor changes that we will need to make. But our 5 values, number 1, ukai pōtanga, and on this plan on a page, I suppose, is represented as the whenua, which the tōtara is connected to. It's around having a sense of belonging and contributing to society. Our second value is kotahitanga, and this is represented as the pakiaka, the roots. It's about working together in unity as a collective. Having strong, unified roots spread throughout the whenua helps our tōtara stand strong and thrive. Manaakitanga, this is represented as the rau, the leaves of the tōtara, providing warmth, shelter and shade all year round. This value is about being mana enhancing towards others through generosity, appreciation and respect. Kaitiakitanga, represented as the peka, the branches, protecting and preserving the tōtara. This value is about protection, preservation and guardianship. And tuakiritanga, represented as the tiwai, the trunk of the tōtara, the spiritual and emotional source of the tōtara. This value concerns identity, pride and confidence. Our focus areas, we have a few focus areas. Our older people feel connected and valued as an integral part of our district. Older people can get around and have access to what they need. Older people participate in their communities in ways that work for them. Once this approach is taken to council, we'll develop a further work program, including the community and other organisations around how we will actually introduce the approach to Kāpiti and work with them. I really would like to acknowledge our community. It's really been at the heart of the development of this approach. We've had over 1,000 members of our community providing their time and thoughts to form this vision, value and outcome of the approach. So nā mihi nui ki a tātou katoa. So I had talked to, I haven't had a chance to talk to you, Andre, but Ngāti Tō Rangatira and Ngā Hapu Ōtaki around what our research was, and we had a research done by Daphne Luke around our kaumātua Māori, and she did 5 workshops around the district and came up with, and this is why we've really used that approach and her research in this body of work. Sorry. They identified, it was interesting, the research that we gathered from them. Kaumātua Māori tend to be very solution focused, and when we asked them what was really important to them, things they came up with, they actually came with solutions as well. And it's a beautiful piece of work, and we'd love to share it with you at, well, sooner rather than later, I would say.
Tēnā koe, Claire. Tuatahi e tika ana ngā mihi aroha ki te whaia Jill Stansfield. E moiho ana au iaia me tōna mahi. Ka nui te aroha ki aia me ona whanau e pane ana I tēnei wā. Are there any comments, any questions, please?
Ai, tautoko ana au I ngā mihi, kua mihia, I ngā whakaaro kua tūkana. I'd just like to, kia ora Claire, thank you for your presentation today. I'd like to give you some feedback about this beautiful picture here and the whakaaro. I appreciate the way that you've put it together. you know, weaving together the kaupapa statements with the āhuatanga of the rākau. We've been at my other pōtai at Te Wānanga Raukawa, we have a draft rākau framework, and we've been working with the graphic designer on some images to help convey what's in the framework. It's a bit more complex than this one, but to convey the framework to others, to staff mostly, but also others. And we've been using the tōtara as well, and so we've spent a lot of time looking at tōtara. As you know, there's a lot of tōtara in this region, and we've had like all these different iterations with the graphic designer and our group, and the proportion of the rākau has been a big deal. And like you, we have these explanations about the different parts of the rākau, and I think you've put it together really well. It's nice explanations there about how the different aspects of the tree symbolise the different kaupapa. Tino pai. I don't know that I've seen too many tōtara though that constructive feedback that actually look like this one. I love the kōrero and the aspects. But yeah, I'm sure there are some up in Hautere that look like this. Usually they're a bit more fuller with more leaves and things, eh? But it's beautiful. Tino pai.
Kōrero mai, any other further comments?
Waiata, a beautiful waiata goes with this tree. Ki ari te koe, ki te tōtara, etu, 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 te tōtara nui. It's a lovely waiata. Yeah, it goes with it. So, nā mihi, e nui ngā kōrero mō te rākau, mō ngā rākau. I'm happy you're looking at it because koe nā taku ingo ko rākau te ora. That's my name, Rākau te ora. Kia ora.
Right at the beginning of your presentation, you had a statement. Yeah, whakatauki from te kākākura. I just wanted to have a look at the last line, the wording of it. Oh, and ask you where it came from, like the referencing for it.
So that is something that we are trying to fix down. So it came from a piece of research that Shah Davis had done for us, and we went back to her and asked her for a reference, and she couldn't find it. So we've been trying to make sure the kupu are correct and to try and find a reference for it. So I do need to work with Andre about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess the translation.
Aye.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll hear more about that later.
Yeah, and in our actual approach itself, we will be looking at doing quite a lot of translation. So we'll have Māori headings and then English subtitles, some translation through it.
Cool.
Yeah.
And sorry.
And no, that's good feedback. It is really hard to find. The graphic design has been a little bit of a hold up for us. It's been quite difficult.
Yeah, mahi nui. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, we have. I've been privy to some of the kōrero around the work behind this, and yeah, it's such an important thing, and really appreciate the mahi that you and the others are doing in this area. Tēnā koe.
Anei rā te mihi ki a koe, Claire, e mahi rangatira tērā. Totara is significant, eh? Our tuahu was constructed using totara, and it's probably fair to say architecturally the biggest whare that was constructed. There was one other that they attempted to construct up in the Tairāwhiti and it fell over. So Rangiatea, of course, is significant to us. The other thing that's reflective of the image that's portrayed here is that totara has its own resin, and so it protects itself from moisture and water, and that's why the early non-Māori settlers gravitated towards totara in those early times, and so totara, a native rākau, was then mass producing fence posts because the fence posts would last longer than any other exotic timber that the new settlers to Aotearoa had previously experienced. The interesting dynamic of totara, though, is that horizontally, it's actually quite weak. It's not a strong structural member when it's horizontal, but it's outstanding when it's standing vertically. And so I see that reflecting the work that's been done here to honour and value the senior members of our communities, because that's what I see depicted here. And understandably, very relatable when I see our kaupapa, our tikanga being expressed in this document and in the initiative that's been taken. I think it's very powerful. It's very informative. It embraces all those elements that I think we all individually consider unique about our senior generation. And some of us are heading in that direction sooner than later. I'm just thinking, Claire, that it might be helpful to direct you to our kaunihera kaumātua. So they've now become quite active with Tatiawa ki whakarongotai. So I'll put you in contact with the chair. And they are meeting regularly now. There's been a big hui in the last week to bring about more engagement between the Marae Reservation trustees and our kaumātua council. So that might be a helpful point of contact for you in terms of your huge patience and perseverance to try and engage with Tatiawa. So I acknowledge that. And I will respond about our tupuna's whakatauki, because it is the last sentence that's not registering with me from our referencing of that. So I will make a note here. I've made a note here to come back to you about that so we can clarify that and provide what I think is our definition of what that translates into in English. But thank you for the significant work that's been done here. I should be very proud of it. The way it's presented is excellent. Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge your acknowledgement of Claire and say thank you. She has been involved in this kaupapa for a number of years now, nearly 8, did you just say? And is deeply personally committed to it, which I think you can see playing out both in her presentation today and in the work that you see in front of you. I just wanted to make sure that the committee is clear on, I guess, where this piece of work is at and what next steps look like. So, in line with our new governance structure, this will be on the agenda for our social sustainability subcommittee meeting this week, for that committee to have an opportunity to provide feedback on the document as well, on the approach, to then inform the staff report that will go ultimately to our strategy, operations and finance committee to seek formal adoption of this approach, so that the work on the implementation piece, which is the really important part, can get started And we'd welcome an opportunity to discuss with mana whenua what role you see for mana whenua, what role you would like to have in that implementation phase. I think developing the right kind of initiatives in the implementation plan is going to require a broad focus from across the district. This is supposed to be an approach to guide the actions and proactive work of a range of parties in the district, not just the council. So would welcome a conversation around what role you would like to play in that going forward for another day.
Thank you, Claire. Tēnā koe te ena, 10.2, kei a koe te wā. This was referenced earlier. Māori Economic Development Grants 2022-2023 recipients. Thank you, Deanna, and thank you, Janice, for preparing this.
Kia ora anō, kia tātou. So yesterday, the Māori Economic Development panel convened and made final deliberations concerning their applications to the Māori Economic Development Fund. What I can report is that 4 of those applicants have been selected as recipients of the fund, and all of the fund totaling $68,000 has been distributed to those 4 applicants. It's not appropriate, I feel, for us to advise to Whakaminenga at this stage of who those applicants are and the amount of funding until such time that we can advise the non-successful applicants of the decisions made. There will be a full report to Whakaminenga at next month's hui, including a report back on last year's applicants and use of funding. Tēnā tātou.
Any questions, any comments? I'll just take it that we acknowledge the work that's been done here and really looking forward to knowing who those successful applicants are. Thank you for the work that's been done here, Deanna, and also we should record our thanks to the panel. Are we satisfied? We're happy that we've solicited all the information we need regarding 10.4. We've captured all that we needed to capture today for that. I believe we have. So I'm going to just accept that everyone's nodding their heads in agreement. Item 11, correspondence. Is there any correspondence? Item 12, future agenda requests. Are there any items that we should note or add to the agenda? I think we've already got at least a couple that we've added to our Ngātaki Tarewa. Any other matters or any other agenda items we should be noting today? Darren?
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Probably quite timely. We're building momentum with revocation of the state highway, and so probably appropriate that we bring a report to this committee in relation to work that was done several years ago around naming.
So we're referring to Old State Highway 1? And we have had, I know, several conversations over time about naming various sections of that state highway. Yep.
Correct.
And we'll put that back on the agenda. Yep. Very good. Any other matters? Are we going to be in a position, Darren, where we could inform Te Whakaminenga within this environment regarding this new appointment?
Thank you. I'm certainly hopeful. If we think about where we are now and we will be into July, I'm going to say most definitely yes.
Tēnā koe, Sophie, kōrero mai.
Yeah, kia ora. Apologies, this is potentially more relevant to item 11 around correspondence. But just wanted to flag the fact that we had a bunch of rangatahi join us at Council for Work Day a couple of months back, one of whom suggested the replacement of one of the flags behind you there, Mr. Chair, to being a Tino Rangatiratanga flag. And I know that you and I have had a brief kōrero, but it might be something that could be, I guess, checked past the other mana whenua partners to see if there's any considerations that could be made in regards to the ordering of that flag and then the placing of that flag alongside the New Zealand, so-called New Zealand flag. I know that the rangatahi who posed that idea are quite interested to see where that ends up. So it would just be nice to be able to follow back, to loop back around on that with them.
Tēnā koe, thank you, Sophie. Yeah, look, I think we should note that. And I've made a note here for us to discuss this further at our art forum on Friday morning. And I think we should encourage further wider conversation across our networks about that. And just be aware that some of us Ngāti Huia then might want to have our Ngāti Huia flag in here. Or the Rokawa flag.
Definitely why it's good to have the kōrero, hey?
Yeah, I'm just being cheeky. Yeah. But thank you for sharing that. I think that's helpful. Item 13. What am I looking at here, Steffi? Is that related to that?
That shouldn't have
Has that got nothing to do with it?
That is administrative.
Is it? Yeah, it's just a slight administrative area here where.
This is for Janice.
Is this the laundry list? Or is this
I don't know. Should I be worried or not?
No, I don't think so.
Was that supposed to come to me for signing?
Probably.
I could have signed it, but it wouldn't have any authority.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I think we have some authority.
There's no public excluded minutes for us to receive on review. So can I perhaps just ask for any other general matters of business?
I think we jumped.
Have we missed something? Oh, yes, sorry. I'm getting taken back to item 8. Are there any items of iwi matters or business that we should note or record today? Kirsten?
Tēnā tātou. Just a brief little update to you all. One of the more recent pieces of work that Ngā Hapu o Ōtaki have been engaging in is our housing strategy. And yeah, we're pretty excited about it. It's at a draft. It's a draft at the moment. So it's going, being circulated to our hapu chairs and then to the wider hapu for discussion and feedback. So there's still a bit of a journey for it, but we hope to have it endorsed or confirmed, or no doubt there will be many more edits to it, but we hope to have something that we can share with you within 2 or 3 months. So we're all excited about it at the moment because we've been in it, and the Urban Advisory have been working with us, and yeah, pretty cool. It's exciting. I don't know. We're going to do the 9. Should I just comment about that now? Well, of course, we know that we're not at the treaty settlements phase yet, but I'm not too involved with this myself. I'm just more observing at the moment. But there's a lot of whānau and hapu and wider iwi members engaged in preparing information for and presenting to the tribunal in the hearings phase at the moment. And yeah, it's amazing. There's an astounding amount of information that's being shared. And of course, it's not the whole story, but it's telling a good chunk of the history. And I don't know, if you're interested in this, most of the material was viewable through the Waitangi Tribunal website. I've probably read like, I don't know, 1/6 of the material. And it's if you've read any of the tribunal reports, what ends up in the reports is a very small amount of the information. You know, they capture what they can, and they do a great job. But the amount of information that's shared and has been shared throughout this area's hearings is astounding, and it's amazing. And yeah, I guess I'm acknowledging all the people that are doing all that work. But for you, I think you've heard today, we're still in the hearings phase. Settlements some number of years away. But it's exciting, it's informative, and yeah, look forward to where we end up. Tēnā tātou.
Tēnā koe. I've made a little note earlier in terms of our Ngā Take Tarewa to publish those hearing dates, so we'll make sure that that's captured from today's meeting. I don't have anything else to add. I'm just aware of the huge volunteer effort being made by our people who are helping to generate briefs of evidence, who are preparing themselves to be mana whenua witnesses in the scheduled hearings, the technical evidence that is being gathered and presented, various hui that are happening right now to expand upon the identified hapu that have been displaced from Porirua, and those families and those hapu relocating to Otaki. Significant efforts being made to work towards the conclusion of this phase of the inquiry. So yeah, I do echo what you're saying, Kirsten, just acknowledge the huge work that's being undertaken and the research that's quite revealing already. It's extremely important to our district, and ultimately it's going to be a massive influence on our local authority when all three mana whenua partners are post-settlement. It will change the landscape again. So looking forward to the next phase of our process with the Crown, from pre-settlement to post-settlement. Yeah, the mandating process that we get to go through, and then into the post-settlement stuff. So yeah, we'll generate that information. I'd make a note here, Steph. We'll generate some further information. We can embed that into our minutes and create some visibility in our Ngā Take Tarewa. Any other kōrero?
For us to be in council under this kōrero here, Because if we stand like the tōtara tree, we'll be one. Our people also had a saying, he tōtara wāhiru e kai mo te ahi. What they said is tōtara tree split in pieces is food for the fire. So if we stand like this tōtara tree here, we will never ever be put in a fire. So e maha ngā kōrero e pāna ki te rākau tōtara. Just a song I tried to sing before. It's ki arite koe, ki te tōtara, e tū, tāne mahuta, mauri ora, te wairu o te tōtara, e tū, tāne mahuta. Ala kia ora tātou. Beautiful symbol, yeah.
I'm going to just invite any final comments under general business. If there's anything else that we need to note from today's meeting, I'm happy to take that response from around the table. Anything from our staff? Elected members? Thank you for hanging in there, Councillor Halliday. I suppose that's just part of this prescription, is it?
Yeah, a lot of seat time at the moment, so I'm not getting out and about with meetings and having chats to people. So hence why everyone's getting a few more emails than normal. But I really enjoyed today's meeting. I thought it was very respectful, and I thought there was a huge amount of information actually shared around all sorts of processes, especially like Claire's korero around the age strategy. The tōtara, I think, as a metaphor is fantastic, and I just felt the way it's been distilled down to very simple approach, but and I think that actually makes it more powerful, to be honest. And very good to see our elderly community engaging in that approach and tikanga approach as well. So very much looking forward to seeing how that comes through that my committee as well. But no, been a fantastic meeting. Thank you for your chairing, Andre. It's been very inclusive and thoroughly enjoyable. I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you very much.
Tēnā koe. Thank you for your valuable time today. Anything else from you, Sophie?
Oh, no, nothing else from me. But just acknowledging all of Councillor Halliday's comments, completely agree, and thanks for letting me sit in despite not being a member of the committee and also contribute, but mainly just to listen, and I really enjoyed that. So, kia ora.
Tēnā koe. Mayor Janet.
Yeah, thank you very much for, I won't turn my video on. Thank you very much for a wonderful meeting today. Covered a broad range of topics, and I think a really good balance between considering things carefully, but also driving things forward for our community. So thanks, everybody.
Tēnā koe. Any other? Oh, Councillor Kirby. Thank you for joining us.
My privilege to be here. It's I always enjoy these. I learn something new every time I come, and so thank you for the honour of being here.
Around here, tā kōtua. Darren.
Thank you. Really to tautoko the comments from everyone in attendance today. These are this committee is somewhat different to I guess the normal committee committee and the tempo of those committees. And just to echo Lawrence's comments, I really enjoy coming to these meetings and learning. I think that is the big bit. You always come in with a view of what might press you at the meeting, and it just simply washes over. And the discussions that we have, this piece of work that we've got in front of us, really show the importance of what this committee brings to not just our council but to Kāpiti as a whole. So I too share your thoughts there. I feel privileged to be able to attend and be a part of this committee.
A kua pau ngā kōrero. Kumutu ngā mahi mo tēnei wahanga, nei reira tēnei taku mihi nunui kia koutou. Pai ana ngā whiti kōrero e putu atu ki enei momo mai. Nei reira kia tau ana mātou ki te manaakitanga o tēnei huihuinga. E te atua e te kaihanga ngā mea katoa, tēnei mātou nei inoi atu ki a koe e te mutunga o tēnei huihuinga. Whakatata mai nei ki tēnei opono ngā hei manaaki hei te aki te hunga tangata kei roto ki te takiwā nei. Whakamau ana mātou ki ngā me pai ki ngā me tika. Ko e nei te tūmanako me te whakapono. I rungi te ingoa tau tama te kai whakaora me te wairua tapu. Tūturu kia rongo whakamaua kia tēnā. Kuie. Kia ora mai tātou. Thank you.